The front door clicked shut, and the house went quiet in a way I didn't expect. I stood in my sister Brooke's living room and listened to the taxi pull away from the curb. The sound faded down the street until it became just another neighborhood noise. Distant tires, a dog barking once, nothing urgent. Brooke and Jared were gone, supposedly off to a Caribbean cruise for 5 days. Sun, water, drinks with little umbrellas. And I was here to watch their daughter. I still had the thermos in my hands, large, plastic, a yellow lid that didn't quite match the rest of the kitchen. Brooke had pressed it into my arms like it was a gift, like she was doing me a favor. I turned with a small smile, the kind you use to keep things pleasant, and looked for Nola. I expected her to be reaching for her iPad. That's how we communicated. She would tap out a sentence, hit the button, and the text-to-speech voice would say it out loud. Sometimes it took time. Sometimes she'd get frustrated and push the tablet away. But we'd always find our way back to each other. Nola wasn't doing any of that. She was standing near the hallway, very still, looking straight at me. No fidgeting, no distracted scanning of the room. Just focused, like she'd been waiting for the door to close. For a moment I thought she was upset about her parents leaving. I was already preparing to say something comforting, something normal. Then she opened her mouth. "Auntie," she said, clear as day, "don't drink the tea Mom made." I didn't move. I stood there holding that thermos, and my mind stalled out like a computer that couldn't load the next screen. Nola's voice was steady, not a whisper, not a strained little sound, a real voice, a child's voice that had been used before. "She planned something bad," Nola added. My hands tightened around the thermos without me meaning to. The plastic creaked slightly. I set it down on the nearest counter like it was fragile, like it might break if I kept holding it, like I might break. I looked at Nola's face, searching for a joke, a misunderstanding, anything. But she didn't look playful. She looked afraid, and she looked certain. I lowered myself onto my knees, slowly, so I wouldn't startle her. "Nola," I said, keeping my voice calm, You can talk?" She nodded once. Small movement, big meaning. "I always could," she said. "Mommy made me stop." I felt my throat tighten, but I kept my face steady. I didn't want her to see me panic. I didn't want her to think she'd done something wrong by speaking. I took a breath, then another. "Okay," I said quietly, like I was talking to myself as much as her. "Okay. We're safe. We're just going to be careful." Nola didn't step forward. She stayed where she was, like she was still deciding whether it was allowed. I glanced at the thermos again. Yellow lid. Herbal tea, Brooke had called it. For stress. Because I looked tired. She'd said it too warmly, too insistently. There was something else, too, something small I hadn't noticed earlier. A folded envelope on the kitchen island. Plain white. My name on it. Written in Brooke's handwriting. I stared at it for an extra second, like my eyes were trying to decide if it mattered. Then I looked back to Nola. "Sweetheart," I said, "I'm going to ask you to tell me exactly what you know. But first, come sit with me." She hesitated. Then she walked over and sat on the edge of the couch, hands in her lap, posture careful, like she'd spent a long time learning how to take up as little space as possible. I sat across from her, not too close. I kept my voice even. "Start from the beginning," I said, "and take your time." Nola swallowed. Her eyes flicked to the front door, then back to me. "I heard her," she said. "2 nights ago, in the kitchen. She was talking to Daddy." I didn't interrupt. I just nodded once so she knew I was listening. "She said the tea would make you sick," Nola continued. "Not dead, just sleepy and hurting, like you have to go to the hospital." My stomach turned, but I kept my breathing slow. I watched her face as she spoke, watched how she worked hard to keep her voice steady. "And while you were sick," she said, "they were going to drive to Indianapolis, to a lawyer. Mommy said she has papers. She said she practiced your name. I sat very still. I'm an accountant. I work with documents and patterns and numbers all day. I'm trained to notice what doesn't fit. And what she was describing fit too well. I looked toward the kitchen again, toward the envelope on the island. Then I looked back to Nola. "Thank you for telling me," I said softly. "You did the right thing." Nola blinked hard and nodded, like she needed that sentence to be true. I stood up slowly and walked to the counter. I didn't touch the thermos again. I just looked at it. Then I looked around the kitchen like it was a crime scene, because that's what it felt like now. I picked up the envelope with 2 fingers and brought it back to the living room. I didn't open it yet. I just held it, noticing how neatly my name was written, the pressure of the pen, the confident strokes. I sat down again. In my head, I started arranging the situation the only way I knew how, into steps. Step 1, don't consume anything Brooke left behind. Step 2, don't let Brooke know I'm aware. Step 3, keep Nola close and keep everything calm until I have proof. I looked at Nola and kept my expression gentle. "Can you tell me something else?" I asked. "Do you know where your mom keeps important papers? Like documents, folders, anything she doesn't want people to see?" Nola's eyes dropped to her hands. Then she nodded. "In the office," she said. "There's a drawer. It has a lock. I know the numbers." I didn't react too quickly. I didn't want to rush her. I let a quiet moment sit between us. Outside, a car passed. The sound was ordinary. The light through the window was ordinary. The living room smelled faintly like Brooke's vanilla plug-in air freshener. Nothing about the room looked dangerous. But I was sitting across from an 8-year-old who had just spoken for the first time in years to warn me not to drink tea. I put the envelope down on the coffee table and nodded once. "All right," I said. "We're going to do this carefully." Then I waited for her to stand first, so she would feel like she had control of her own body again. Nola slid off the couch without making a sound, even though she didn't need to be silent anymore. It was habit. Her feet hit the carpet softly, and she looked up at me like she was asking permission to move. I nodded once. She led the way down the hallway toward Brooke's home office. The house was spotless in that staged, magazine-ready way. No shoes by the door, no mail on the counter, throw pillows arranged like they'd never been touched. I'd always assumed Brooke was just organized. Now it felt more like control. As we walked, I kept my steps slow, not because I wanted to delay, but because I needed my mind to stay steady. If I moved too fast, I'd start acting on emotion, and emotion was not going to help me. Nola stopped at a closed door and placed her hand on the knob. She looked back at me again. "It's in here," she said, voice quiet but clear. I opened the door and flicked on the light. The room looked exactly like Brooke wanted it to look. White desk, framed family photo, a tidy pen cup, a small plant that probably never died because someone remembered to water it. A filing cabinet sat against the wall. The desk drawers were sleek, modern, with one drawer that had a small digital keypad. Nola pointed at the keypad. "Mommy uses this one," she said. I moved closer and crouched so I could see it clearly. The numbers were clean, no smudges, no wear. Brooke was the type to wipe everything down. "What's the code?" I asked. Nola didn't answer right away. She looked at the floor, then up at me. 0315, she said. "March 15th. Their anniversary." Of course it was. I typed it in carefully. The keypad beeped once, then the drawer clicked open. I didn't pull it wide right away. I paused with my fingers on the handle, like I was bracing myself. Nola stood behind my shoulder, watching. "Sweetheart," I said softly, "if you feel scared, you can step back. You don't have to look." "I want to," she said. So I opened the drawer. Inside were folders stacked neatly, like Brooke had prepared them to be found. At first glance it looked boring. Forms, envelopes, printed emails. But the first thing I saw made my stomach drop. A bank authorization form with my name on it. And my signature at the bottom. Except it wasn't my signature, not really. It was close enough that most people wouldn't notice. But I notice handwriting for a living. My capital L has a long loop that swings left before it comes back. This one didn't. The pressure points were wrong. The slant was wrong. It was an imitation of me, not me. I set the paper on the desk and pulled out the next folder. Trust account statements, page after page, withdrawal after withdrawal, each one under $15,000. I didn't need to do the math to understand what that meant. Someone was staying under a reporting threshold on purpose. I flipped through slowly, keeping my face neutral, even though my chest felt tight. In my head, the numbers started lining up like they always do, dates, amounts, patterns. This wasn't random. This was a system. Nola was still behind me, very still. "How long has she been doing this?" I asked, not to accuse Nola, just thinking out loud. Nola's voice came quietly. "A long time," she said. "She practiced your name a lot." I reached deeper into the drawer and pulled out another stack, printed emails. The header showed a law office in Indianapolis. The thread was about an emergency transfer and referenced me as unstable and unable to manage financial decisions. My hands stayed steady, but my jaw tightened. Brooke wasn't just stealing. She was building a story where I was the problem. Then I found a thin file folder with a label written in Brooke's neat handwriting, "Lisa, mental health concerns." I opened it and felt something cold settle in my stomach. Pages of notes, dated entries, descriptions of episodes, and paranoia. Statements about how I couldn't be trusted with money. It was all written like a record, like evidence. None of it was true. I put the folder down and stared at it for a second longer than I needed to. The room felt too bright. The air felt too still. Even the hum of the house sounded loud in my ears. Nola's voice broke the silence. "She told Daddy you were crazy sometimes," she said carefully, like the word itself was dangerous. I turned my head slightly to look at her. Her face was serious, almost older than 8. "Did she say that to you?" I asked. Nola nodded once. "She said you needed help," she whispered. "She said if you got mad, people would believe her. Because you don't have kids. And she does." I let that sit for a moment. I took a slow breath in, then out. Then I did what I always do when things feel out of control. I made it procedural. I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the camera. "Okay," I said quietly, more to myself than anyone. "We're going to document this." I photographed the forged form first, then the bank statements, then the emails, then the folder of fake notes. I took pictures of dates, names, account numbers, everything that mattered. I didn't rush. I didn't skip. I treated it the way I'd treat a client audit, because that's what this was now. Nola watched the whole time. When I finished, I closed the drawer and left it exactly how we found it. Papers returned in the same order, folder edges lined up, the keypad wiped with my sleeve so I didn't leave prints. Then I turned off the office light and closed the door. We walked back to the living room in silence. Not tense silence, just careful silence, the kind you choose because you're thinking. I sat down on the couch and Nola sat beside me, shoulders tight. I looked at the thermos in the kitchen again, just visible from where we were. Yellow lid, sitting there like it belonged. I put my phone face down on my knee and spoke softly. "Here's what we're going to do," I said. "First, we're not drinking anything she left for me. Not the tea, not snacks, nothing." Nola nodded. "Second," I continued, "we're not letting her know we found anything. Not yet." Nola's fingers curled into her sleeve. "And third," I said, "I'm calling someone I trust, someone who can help me stay calm and do this the right way." Nola looked up at me. Like the police? She asked. Eventually, I said. But first, I need one person here with me. Tonight. In this house. I picked up my phone again, turned it over, and scrolled to a name I hadn't called in months. Gwen Mercer. My thumb hovered for a second. Then I pressed call. Gwen answered on the second ring. "Hey," she said, already alert. "You don't usually call this late." "I need you to come over," I said. I kept my voice even, but I didn't soften it. "Right now. I can't explain everything on the phone." There was a pause. I could hear the faint sound of movement on her end, keys maybe, fabric brushing. Gwen was a nurse. She knew the difference between panic and urgency. "I'm on my way," she said. "Stay where you are." I put the phone face down on the coffee table and sat back. Then I waited. Nola watched me closely, like she was measuring whether this was the right decision. I gave her a small nod. Not reassurance. Confirmation. "It's okay," I said. "She's safe." We stayed on the couch. I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't offer snacks. I didn't try to distract her. I wanted everything to stay exactly as it was. Still, observable. A few minutes later, I heard a car pull up outside. Doors. Footsteps. A knock that was firm but not loud. I opened the door and Gwen stood there in scrubs, hair pulled back, eyes sharp. She took one look at my face and stepped inside without waiting to be invited. "What happened?" she asked. "Come sit," I said. "I'll tell you." We sat at opposite ends of the couch with Nola between us. Gwen noticed her right away. "This is Nola?" she asked gently. Nola nodded. "And she can talk," Gwen added, not as a question, but as an observation. "Yes," I said, "she can." So I told her everything, not rushed, not emotional, just facts. The tea, the documents, the withdrawals, the practice signatures, the threat that made a 3-year-old give up her voice. Gwen didn't interrupt. She leaned forward with her elbows on her knees and listened the way she always did, focused, present, grounded. When I finished, the room stayed quiet for a few seconds. Then Gwen stood up. "Where's the tea?" she asked. "In the kitchen," I said. "I didn't touch it." "Good," she replied. She pulled a pair of gloves from her bag like it was the most normal thing in the world. She walked into the kitchen, unscrewed the thermos carefully, and poured a small amount into a clean container she'd brought with her. "I know someone at the lab," she said, sealing it. "Overnight analysis. We'll know by morning." She came back to the living room and sat down again. "This isn't just theft," she said calmly. "This is planned incapacitation. And what she did to that child—" She stopped herself and looked at Nola. "That part matters just as much." Nola sat very straight. "I'm not quiet anymore," she said. Gwen smiled at her, not wide, not emotional, respectful. "I can see that," she said. I took another breath and shifted gears in my head. This was the point where feelings stopped being useful. "Here's what I know," I said. "She thinks I drank the tea. She thinks I'll be sick. She thinks she has time." Gwen nodded. "Which means," she said, "we don't stop her yet. We let her keep going." I nodded back. "That's step 1, I said. Gwen raised an eyebrow. "There's more than one step?" "There always is," I said. Step 2, I knew, would involve law enforcement, but not a panicked call, a prepared one. Step 3 would be silence, controlled silence. I reached for my phone again and scrolled to another name, someone I trusted, someone methodical, Kevin Calloway, law school, prosecutor, calm under pressure. I didn't dial yet. Instead, I looked at Nola. "Sweetheart," I said, "tonight you're staying right here with us. You don't need to talk unless you want to. You don't need to do anything." She nodded and leaned slightly closer to me. Outside, the house stayed quiet. The night moved on like nothing unusual was happening. Inside, everything had already changed. I picked up the phone. And then I waited one more second before pressing call. Kevin answered with his last name, the way people do when they're already in work mode. Calloway. "It's Lisa," I said. "I need your help, and I need you to listen all the way through before you respond." There was a pause, not hesitation, attention. "Go ahead," he said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't rush. I gave him the outline first, then the details, the forged signatures, the trust withdrawals, the plan to make me sick, the child who had been silenced for 5 years. I told him where Brooke was supposed to be, and where we knew she actually was. When I finished, Kevin didn't speak right away. I could hear him breathing, slow and controlled. "This is serious," he said finally. "This isn't a family dispute. This is fraud, forgery, attempted poisoning, and child psychological abuse. And if they're crossing state lines with money, that makes it federal." "I assumed as much," I said. "Good," he replied, "because that means we do this cleanly. No confrontation, no warnings." "That was my plan," I said. He exhaled once, sharp. "I'm going to loop in local police and a federal contact. I'll also reach out to the Indianapolis attorney if I can identify him. If he's legitimate, he won't want any part of this once he knows." "Her meeting is scheduled for day 4, I said. "She thinks I'll still be sick." "Then we let her think that," Kevin said. "You don't block her. You don't accuse her. You stay cooperative." "I can do that," I said. "I believe you," he replied. "One more thing. We'll need a formal statement from the child. That has to be done properly. A child advocacy specialist. Recorded. No pressure." I looked at Nola, sitting quietly between Gwen and me, her hands folded, listening without intruding. "She's ready," I said. "She's been ready for a long time." "All right," Kevin said. "I'll coordinate that. Tonight you document everything and don't leave that house unless you have to. Call me if anything changes." "I will," I said. I hung up and set the phone face down again. Gwen leaned back slightly. "Okay," she said. "Now we wait." We didn't talk much after that. I made a simple dinner, pasta, nothing fancy. I didn't use anything from Brooke's fridge except sealed items. Gwen washed the plates herself. I noticed, but I didn't comment. Later, when the house was quiet again, Nola sat on the couch with her knees tucked up, watching the ceiling fan turn. "Can I sleep near you?" she asked. "Yes," I said immediately. "You can sleep in the guest room. I'll be right across the hall." She nodded and stood, then paused. "Aunt Lisa," she said, testing the name like it was something new. "If I talk tomorrow, is that okay?" I met her eyes. "It's always okay," I said. "But it's also okay to be quiet. You decide." She thought about that, then nodded and went down the hall. That night I lay awake longer than usual. Not because I was afraid, because I was organizing. Dates, times, documents, steps. Outside, the streetlights came on. Somewhere, a neighbor's TV murmured through a wall. Everything ordinary kept going. In the morning, my phone buzzed, a text from Brooke. "How are you feeling today?" I stared at it for a moment, then typed carefully. "Still really sick, hard to stay awake." I sent it. Then I waited. The reply came faster than I expected. "Oh no," Brooke wrote. "That tea must have been too strong. Please rest. Don't worry about anything there. I've got it covered." I set the phone down and didn't answer. Gwen watched me from the kitchen doorway, coffee mug in hand. She didn't ask what the message said. She didn't need to. The shape of my silence was enough. We kept the morning quiet. Nola ate toast at the table, feet swinging slightly, humming to herself without realizing it. I noticed that she did that now, made small sounds when she felt safe. No words, just presence. At 10, a plain sedan pulled up outside. No lights, no markings. A woman and a man stepped out, both dressed casually, both carrying nothing that looked official. Gwen nodded toward the window. That'll be them. I opened the door before they knocked. They introduced themselves by first names only and showed badges quickly, privately. The woman crouched down to Nola's level without touching her. "Hi, Nola," she said. "I'm here to listen, only if you want to talk." Nola glanced at me. I nodded once. "I can talk," she said. They set up in the dining room. No uniforms, no pressure, just a small camera on the table, turned slightly away so it wouldn't feel like a spotlight. A child psychologist joined by video, her voice calm and steady. I stayed in the next room. Gwen stayed with me. We didn't speak. Time moved slowly. I focused on details that didn't matter. Dust on the windowsill, the tick of the wall clock, the faint smell of coffee. Waiting was an action now, not passive, intentional. When it was done, the woman came to the doorway and nodded. "She did very well," she said. "Very clear, very brave." I didn't go into the dining room right away. I needed a minute to reset my face. When I did, Nola looked tired but lighter, like she'd set something heavy down. That afternoon, Kevin called again. "They're moving," he said. "Local police are aligned. Federal interest confirmed. The Indianapolis attorney has agreed to cooperate. He had concerns already." "Good," I said. "Tomorrow's your hardest part," he added. "You keep pretending. You don't get better. You don't recover." "I understand." "And Lisa," he said softer now, "this ends with paperwork, not yelling, not closure conversations." "That's fine," I said. "I prefer paperwork." That evening I sent one more message to Brooke. "Doctor says maybe food poisoning. I feel awful about ruining your trip." The typing bubble appeared, then disappeared, then reappeared. "Don't stress," she wrote. "Focus on resting. Everything else is handled." I put the phone face down. That night Nola asked if I could read to her. We sat on the edge of the guest bed while I read slowly, the same book we'd read before, back when she only listened. She leaned against my arm, relaxed. Halfway through she interrupted me. "I like your voice," she said. "It's calm." I nodded and kept reading. Later, after the lights were off and the house settled into sleep, I stood alone in the kitchen for a moment. The thermos was gone now, taken as evidence. The counter was clean, empty. I poured myself a glass of water from a sealed bottle and drank it slowly. Tomorrow, Brooke would walk into a law office believing everything was going according to plan. I turned off the light and went to bed. And I waited. Morning came quietly. No alarms, no rush, just pale light through the kitchen window and the low sound of the refrigerator turning on and off. I made oatmeal and cut up a banana. Nola ate slowly, watching the spoon like it was doing something interesting. I didn't tell her what day it was. She didn't need that wait. At 9:30, Kevin texted. "They've arrived in Indianapolis. Hotel confirmed. No changes to the plan." I read it once. Then I put the phone face down. This was the part where nothing dramatic happened on the surface. No sirens, no confrontations, just time passing exactly the way it always does when something irreversible is already in motion. At 10, Brooke texted again. "How are you feeling now?" I waited a full 5 minutes before replying, not to play games, to keep the rhythm believable. "Still weak, mostly sleeping." A heart emoji appeared almost immediately. I didn't respond. Gwen had already left for work. Before she went, she'd looked at me and said, "You're doing this exactly right," like she was talking to a patient who needed to hear that more than once. Then she'd hugged Nola and left without fuss. By late morning, the house felt too clean, too still. I moved through it slowly, wiping the counter that didn't need wiping, straightening a cushion that was already straight. These were not nervous habits. They were anchors, ordinary actions to keep my body calm while everything else unfolded somewhere else. Around noon, Kevin called. "They're walking into the building now," he said. "Third floor. Conference room is set." "Okay," I said. I sat down at the dining table. Nola sat across from me with crayons and paper. She was drawing something detailed, shapes, lines, careful coloring, focused. "Do you want me to stop?" she asked, noticing my attention drift. "No," I said. "You're fine." I stayed where I was. I didn't pace, I didn't stand up, I didn't refresh my phone. Waiting was still part of the plan. 10 minutes passed, then another. Finally, Kevin spoke again. "They're inside," he said. "Brooke is confident. Jared looks not confident." I pictured it without trying to. Brooke with her shoulders back, voice steady. Jared following half a step behind like he always did. "Has she presented the documents yet?" I asked. "Yes," Kevin said. "She's explaining why you couldn't attend, medical emergency. She's positioning herself as the responsible one." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. Nola looked up from her drawing. "Is she lying right now?" she asked quietly. "Yes," I said, "but not for long." I didn't elaborate. Kevin went silent for a moment, then spoke again. "They're comparing signatures." I closed my eyes briefly, not in fear, in concentration. I knew those signatures. I knew the margins of error. I knew what a trained examiner would see. Another pause. "She's deflecting," Kevin said, "questioning your mental health, claiming inconsistency." I exhaled slowly. That had been predictable. Then his voice changed slightly, not louder, just firmer. "They've introduced the lab results." I opened my eyes. "They're bringing up the withdrawals," he continued, "the amounts, the pattern, the timeline." I looked at the clock on the wall. The second hand moved steadily. Nothing rushed, nothing stopped. "Lisa," Kevin said, "they're playing the recording now." I didn't ask which one. I didn't need to. I glanced at Nola. She was coloring again, but her grip on the crayon was tighter. I placed my hand flat on the table, not on hers, just close enough that she could feel it there if she needed to. Kevin didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, "Jared just asked for a lawyer." That told me everything. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the far wall, not imagining the room in Indianapolis, not imagining Brooke's face. I stayed where I was. Because this part was no longer mine to control. All I had to do now was wait for the call that said the structure had finished collapsing on its own. The call didn't come right away. There was a stretch of time where nothing happened on my end. No updates, no vibrations from my phone, just the steady hum of the house and the quiet scratch of crayon on paper. I didn't fill the silence. Nola finished her drawing and slid it toward me. It was a house with 2 windows and a door drawn very carefully in the center. Above it, she'd added a sun and something that looked like a speech bubble. "What's that?" I asked. "That's the house listening," she said. "So nobody has to be quiet anymore." I nodded. "I like that." She went back to coloring. I stayed seated. I didn't check the time again. When Kevin finally called, his voice was different. Not excited, not relieved, just settled. "They've placed her under arrest," he said. "Forgery, fraud, attempted poisoning, and child abuse charges are all moving forward." I absorbed that without reacting. "Jared is cooperating," he continued. "He gave a full statement. He confirmed the plan, the forged documents, the Indianapolis meeting. He signed away parental rights an hour ago." "Okay," I said. There was a pause on the line. "They played Nola's statement in the room," Kevin added. "That's when it changed." I didn't ask him to describe it. I didn't need the image. "She denied it at first," he said. "Said Nola couldn't speak. Said the recording was fake. But that didn't hold once medical records were introduced." I closed my eyes briefly, then opened them again. Lisa, Kevin said, you don't need to come down here. You don't need to confront her. Everything is documented. That's fine, I said. I wasn't planning to. That's probably for the best, he replied. After we hung up, I didn't move right away. I sat at the table and let the moment pass through me without trying to label it. Relief wasn't the right word. Neither was anger. It felt more like gravity settling back into place. Nola was watching me. Is it done? She asked. Yes, I said. The part you were carrying is done. She thought about that, then nodded once. Not dramatic, just accepting. Later that afternoon, a family court representative called. Calm voice, clear process. Emergency custody hearing scheduled. Temporary placement approved. No confusion, no pushback. Paperwork followed. Digital signatures, confirmations, everything in writing. That evening, I stood in Brooke's kitchen one last time. The house was already starting to feel like it belonged to no one. I wiped the counter again, out of habit, and then stopped myself. This wasn't my space to clean. Nola came to stand beside me. Are we going home? She asked. Yes, I said. We are. We packed only what mattered, clothes, books, the purple dinosaur sweatshirt she liked, nothing else. Before we left, I walked back into the office and stood in front of the desk. The drawer was still locked. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. Everything inside had already said what it was going to say. At my apartment, the spare room waited. Blank walls, empty closet, quiet. Nola stepped inside and looked around. It's okay, she said, like she was reassuring herself. Yes, I agreed. It is. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. I logged into the trust account and reviewed every transaction one more time. Not because I doubted it, because this was how I reclaimed ownership, by understanding it fully. Numbers don't argue, they don't manipulate, they don't lie. They just sit there, waiting for someone to read them correctly. I closed the laptop, turned off the light, and went to bed. Tomorrow would be about court schedules and therapy appointments and grocery lists, but tonight the house was quiet, and for the first time that quiet felt earned. 2 weeks later, we sat in a small courtroom that smelled faintly of paper and disinfectant. There was nothing dramatic about it, no raised voices, no sudden revelations, just a judge, a clerk, a few files stacked neatly on a desk, and a process that moved the way it was supposed to move. Nola sat beside me, feet not quite touching the floor. She wore a purple dress she'd chosen herself that morning. She kept smoothing the fabric over her knees, not from nerves exactly, more like focus. She was paying attention. The judge reviewed the documents quietly, the arrest report, the financial records, the statements, the medical evaluations, the recorded testimony. Everything was already in order by the time we walked in. When the judge finally looked up, he didn't look at me first. He looked at Nola. I understand you've been very brave, he said, not smiling but kind, and I understand you've been asked to be quiet for a long time. Nola nodded. I want to ask you something, he continued. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. But if you do, where do you feel safest living right now? She didn't answer right away. She looked at me. Then she looked back at the judge. I want to live with my Aunt Lisa, she said. Her voice was steady. She listens. There was a brief pause. The judge nodded and signed the order. Emergency custody granted. We walked out of the courthouse without stopping to talk to anyone. Outside, the air felt ordinary. Cars passed. Someone laughed nearby. Life didn't rearrange itself for us. It just kept going. At home, we ate dinner at the small table by the window. Pasta again. Nola talked the entire time. About school. About a bird she'd seen earlier. about how pancakes were better than waffles, but only if they had blueberries. I listened. Later, after she went to bed, I stood in the doorway of her room. Purple walls now, books on the shelf, a lamp left on low, because she preferred it that way. She was asleep on her side, one hand curled near her face, breathing slow and even. In the kitchen, I made tea. From a box I bought myself. I poured it into a plain mug and sat at the table while it cooled. The trust account was frozen and audited. Most of the money was recovered. The rest would be handled through court. I became the sole trustee, officially, with everything documented and reviewed. Brooke accepted a plea deal. I didn't attend the hearing. I didn't feel the need to. Some things don't require your presence to be resolved. Nola started therapy the following week. Some days were quiet again. Some days were loud. Both were allowed. We moved at her pace. One evening, while we were cleaning up after dinner, she asked, "If someone else is quiet like I was, how do they get help?" I rinsed a plate and set it in the rack. "Sometimes," I said, "they just need someone to notice." She nodded like she was filing that away. Later that night, I sat on the couch with my phone face down beside me. I didn't need it. The apartment was calm, orderly, ours. If you stayed with me through this story, thank you. If it meant something to you, please like and subscribe. It helps more than you think. And if you'd like, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from and what time it is there. I read every comment. 2 more stories are already on your screen. One of them might sound familiar in a quiet way.